Welcome everybody to Louology, little Zoom webinar with the famous Medspa attorney, Kevin. Is it pronounced Piecuch, Kevin?
Piecuch, yes it is.
Love it, love it, love it. So everybody, this is Kevin Piecuch. And Kevin, you're in the Midwest. What city are you in?
I am in Detroit, Motown, USA, right now.
I hear they're quite famous for the car world, for the car business, right?
Absolutely. I think our music is probably a more enduring legacy, but yes, cars is the lifeblood of the city.
Yep, awesome. All right, Kevin. So we have been involved with the Louology concept for, I don't know, going on a year now. And this concept was started because I've been doing this, as you know, for 18 years, medical aesthetics. We've trained, 30,000 people. Sure. And the times have shifted where we have a lot of people opening up their own businesses nowadays. I feel like back in the day, for every 100 nurses or estheticians or laser techs, entrepreneurs we trained, maybe 80% would get a job somewhere else and 20% would be entrepreneurial. Now I feel like the times have changed. I don't know if it's because of COVID or just people excited about making money, but I feel like 80% of our attendees are out there saying, gosh, I want to start a business.
Sure.
And of course, as you can imagine, I get asked 10 zillion questions on how to market, how to grow a business, but then of course comes in the legal realm. And I'm not going to bullshit anybody. I'm not an attorney. I mean, I know what I know, but I only know what I know. So I thought it'd be cool to kind of pick your brain and kind of give you the things that are top of mind for me, all the questions I can think of that people are asking me, because it'll be a great source of information for them. But also, I actually printed some questions I've gotten like in the last week from people. So I can actually read you also verbatim what my clients have asked me. And I thought this would be great because people are always obviously looking for an attorney that knows their stuff, that's affordable, that's been there 1,000 times before. And I will share with the crowd, with your blessing, that you were the in-house counsel for the largest med spa chains in the United States of America called called American Laser long ago. I know they had a couple hundred locations nationwide before they moved on to other things, and they were doing technology and injections primarily. Is that correct?
That's right. Everywhere in almost every state, but certainly all the ones where there was good population. And we at the end we had 240 locations.
Wow! So it'd be safe to say that you've done quite a few contracts for medical directors and legal things in those locations.
Yes, and even after I left American Laser, I continue to remain in the cosmetic industry, consulting and working with people like you and others around the country who are in this business.
I don't even remember. We've done business together for so long. Who referred you to us? I don't even remember.
I used to be the head of this group called the International Aesthetic and Laser Association, which was a trade group specifically for people involved in cosmetic medicine. I was actually one of the founders of that. And someone from that group recommended me to you. And
got it.
It's been, I don't know, since 2007 or 8. It's been a long time.
Wow. I think we've grown a lot since then. Holy moly.
A lot.
All right. So, let's role play it. So a nurse, a doctor, an esthetician, a laser tech graduates from national laser, they're pumped. They're going to start their own business. And maybe it's not some elaborate fancy nets, but maybe it's just a little hold on. Maybe they're going to rent a space for $500 a month and, buy some injections and baby step it. So from a legal standpoint, is it correct in saying that every one of these people, have to have a medical director at any state in the United States or no?
Yeah, every single state that does cosmetic medical procedures requires that a physician be intimately involved in that business.
Okay, now I know that the laws are different in every state. Like Arizona, we're very flexible, where an MD, a DO, a naturopathic physician or nurse practitioner in Arizona can be the medical director. I know most states that isn't the case, is it?
Right. No, it's unusual. I think you also have dentists can do it now in Arizona, which is unusual. But generally speaking, an MD or a DO is your first line of person who should be your medical director. Now, that's not necessarily true everywhere. Sometimes a nurse practitioner could also be your medical director. So it depends. So nurse practitioners and PAs sometimes have the ability under some states' rules to operate independently. If you're in one of those states, you may have a medical director who is someone other than a doctor or an MD. However, in most situations, even the PA or the nurse practitioner is still going to have a physician to whom that person reports. So there was always going to be a doctor related to your business, no matter where you are.
Gotcha. So basically,
don't go if you don't know any doctors and can't find a doctor. This is not a business for you.
Yep. But which is why we're a great resource, because I've found that the biggest problem I've found with our graduates getting businesses rolling has never been, oh no, I can't find medical director. It's always like, how do I grow it? How do I market it? How do I make some money? To me, that's the biggest question. So on that note, obviously, if anybody was ever using you to do a medical director agreement, you could walk them through what's legal in their state and who qualifies. You could answer all those questions for each individual person, regardless of the state.
Right. And there's a couple of things you always have to find out. Number one, do they require a medical director? That's the first question. Then the second question is, where is that medical director need to be located? In some states, the medical director needs to actually be physically on site. Others, remote supervision is perfectly fine. That is always dependent on state law. Every state has its own rules. Depending on the state, it's what type of, where the doctor needs to be located. Then you also need to know what is the level of supervision required.
Right.
Do they be there every day? Do they need to be there by phone call? You know, there's a lot of different rules, and those are all specific by every single state. So don't assume because you know the rules in Arizona that if you want to open a business in California, you have got all the knowledge you need. It is state specific, and they are many states have different rules.
Okay, so step one, before somebody opens a business, first they identify what type of medical supervision is necessary. Can it be an MD, DO, nurse practitioner? That's step one.
Right. Step one.
Okay, step two, obviously they have a conversation with the person, but before they have the conversation, they have to know how to explain it, because the doctor's gonna say, what do you need me for? What do you need me to do? So if you had to generalize, if you had to summarize in as few words as possible, the responsibility of the medical director, how would you summarize that?
So they are responsible to make sure that these procedures, and again, not everything you do in a cosmetic facility is necessarily going to be a medical procedure. So again, some things are medical procedures, some are not. So the medical director is in charge. As a matter of fact, every person that comes in to get an actual medical procedure in your business, that patient literally belongs to the doctor. The doctor is ultimately responsible for the well-being of that patient. You are providing the service, but the doctor is ultimately responsible. So the first thing you need to be sure, and you need to be clear with your doctor, is that, is the doctor willing to trust you to be his or her partner in the performing of medical procedures? So that's the first thing. So there's a trust thing. And I never, ever, ever want to, if you try to undersell the responsibility, I think that's a bad thing, because every single doctor is going to run this by their lawyer, and the lawyer is immediately going to say, oh my goodness, no, you're responsible for these. So if you say, oh, it's no big deal, you just have to review a few charts, and if I need you, if there's an adverse reaction, I'll call you on the phone, and I'll give you $1,000 a month, and it's easy money, and I'll never bother you. If that's how you sell it, they go to the lawyer, and the lawyer say, this is not what the deal is.
I totally agree.
Recognize that you are partners in the practice of medicine. And then you're going to have to convince that partner that you are qualified by your experience and by your training, that you are a worthy partner.
Yeah.
And only you can do that. Only you can provide that persuasion.
Yeah, you know, I find it so interesting. So there's a ton of doctors out there that are already medical directors, many for multiple clinics out there. They know the game. You don't need to explain them. But for the new kid, like let's say you approach a primary care physician, doesn't know a lot about Botox, lasers. He's, oh my gosh, if I'm your medical director and I'm supervising, what if somebody dies from a bad Botox or laser treatment? I'm on the hook. And so the education process is, of course, to let them know not too many people I know have died from Botox fillers or lasers.
Absolutely. And, you know, and I really think it's a good idea for anyone who wants to start their business, get some experience first. You know, if what you were doing before this was, and again, I'm all for career changers. Career changing is a great thing to do. But if you are ready to start a business, especially a medical business, it would be really helpful if you get some experience to give that doctor some confidence that you didn't just take a course, which is a great thing, but you also got a little experience. You've actually seen situations. So you've maybe seen an adverse reaction or two, and you already know how to manage those situations.
Right.
So
now, let me ask you a question.
I strongly urge you to get some hands-on, real-time experience before you decide to open this business.
Kevin, does the medical director, the doctor that they choose, have to have an active license in the state they're practicing? It could be in a different state.
So, right. So because you're practicing medicine in every license is specific to the state where you're located. So whatever medical director you're using better be licensed in the state where your business is located. Otherwise, that doctor could be accused of practicing medicine without a license. If they are not licensed in that particular state, they cannot be your medical director.
Got it. Yeah, I know. I knew the answer. I wanted to hear from you because I get asked that a lot. And I want to double check everything with my attorney, even though I think I know it all, I don't. I'm human.
Yeah, and don't even begin to ask me about naturopath doctors or, there are a lot of doctors out there. Unless you have a doctor who is trained under the Medical Practice Act of your state, which are DOs and MDs, they are not going to pass as a doctor. And
is Arizona the only state in the country that allows a naturopath?
Yes, they're the only ones.
Wow, that's crazy. Why is that? Why is that?
I don't know.
There's two big. I think there's a huge naturopathic school
here. Have some good friends in the legislature, and maybe they knew a governor. Who knows?
Yeah, there's a school out here called Southwest. It's a naturopathic school. They must have a big political presence here and talk some people into it, right?
Right, they do. And by the way, chiropractors usually are not considered physicians for the purpose of being a medical director.
Okay, so let's take a step backwards for a second. So here I am. I'm a nurse. I graduated from National Laser. I'm an entrepreneur, and I want to start my own business. Before I even consider medical director, I'm kind of clueless. I haven't opened a business before. Isn't there some legal structure? Do I have to set up an LLC, a corporation? What legal corporate structures might I set up as just a business owner?
Sure. So again, remember your business is you can't be a medical corporation anyway. So your medical director is going to be operating under the auspices of a medical corporation. But your business, because you are not a doctor, should either be a LLC or maybe an S corp. Those are your probably two best bets. You definitely want a corporation. You don't want to do this as a sole proprietor. You need the protection of a corporation if you're doing this type of a business. Normally, that's either an LLC or a corporation, like a subchapter S corp. One of those two.
Is that a question for their accountant, whether it's an LLC or sub S?
Again, a lot of that has to, check with your accountant. I'm not an accountant. I mean, I know I have my preferences. I think LLCs are usually the best. They're easy to form and they're very, very flexible. There's also privacy as far as the ownership. So there's a lot of advantages to LLCs. But again, there may be a reason why a corporation makes sense to you, and your accountant would probably know that better than me.
Yep. And you mentioned something before, and I want to circle back to that. You said, okay, the medical director oversees the medical treatments. Now, medical treatment obviously is something like Botox, fillers, or lasers, but what would not qualify as a medical treatment, like things like facials or peels, or what would not qualify?
Right. So normally something that doesn't penetrate the skin. So if it's just a surface layer, so normally chemical peels are not considered medical procedures, though there are states where they're talking about that. Microdermabrasions are not medical procedures because again, it doesn't touch the living layer of the skin. Anything that gets to the living cells is usually considered penetrative and is a medical procedure. So chemical peels, microderms, microneedling is not normally a medical procedure.
I hear, Kevin, on the microneedling, I hear that, well, I know that because we train on microneedling, but you can go different depths of the skin. So I think there's like a softer depth where you're not medical, but if you go deeper, you become medical.
Exactly. And again, that's completely on. Make sure you talk to a good lawyer when you're trying to decide whether you need a medical director to supervise the particular procedure. Anything involving an IPL device, anything involving a laser is always going to be a medical procedure. Anything using injectables can typically only be done by a licensed medical professional.
Right. Now, there's more than lasers. As you know, there's intense plus light, radio frequency, ultrasound. Is it all those technologies?
All of those things, right. Radio frequency, IPLs. I don't know that light therapy is considered medical in some. It depends. It really depends. Again, talk to your lawyer, talk to a person to see if there's some specific procedure you want, if you want to determine whether it's medical and needs a medical director or supervisor.
Yeah. And Kevin, I'm sure you know this obviously, but Arizona, I can't remember years ago, I think it was right before COVID, Arizona changed the laws where to be a medical director in Arizona, they had to take a 24-hour classroom or online situation to get some basic knowledge. Is there many states that are doing that, or is it just like Arizona right now?
Arizona is a little unusual. Texas has a pretty comprehensive regulatory environment as well that does have some demands on the medical directors, but that's pretty unusual. In most states, the doctors are very strong in their lobbies and they get to do pretty much whatever they want. You got your medical license, they figure you can, you have the ability to choose to do whatever medical procedures you want. So there's very, very, very few restrictions on medical directors in states other than, and California is always regulatory heavy. So there's a few things you have to be aware of in California, but basically all the other states, if you are a physician, there is no specific requirement.
Okay, good.
Medical director.
Yeah, good note. So somebody asked me just this morning, they said, Louis, you know, gosh, I don't have a lot of money and I'm setting up this practice. I put my blood, sweat, and tears in it. And, you know, I'm trying to cut costs everywhere I can. Do I have to have an attorney to set up this med spa? And that comes down to, well, I'll let you answer that question.
So look, you know, I am an attorney and I do make my living doing legal work. You know, Rich Morgan, who was the founder of American Laser Centers, always said there's two things you're never cheap with. You're never cheap with your accountants and you're never cheap with your lawyers. Because again, those are the two professionals where advice can be literally make the difference between you being put out of business or being able to operate safely and legally. I think it's important to at least have a consultation. Again, a person like me, if you ask me, you know, some basic questions, I would never spend more than an hour. I mean, anyone that would spend more than an hour giving you sort of the lowdown on the regulatory environment in your state is probably overcharging you. So it's not that hard to find. It's not that hard to know. And if you have a competent professional, someone who actually has worked in the industry, it shouldn't take that much time.
Can you think of anything top of mind that over the years, I mean, you've seen all kinds of lawsuits in this industry, but have you ever seen like some lawsuit or problem somebody's had where you said, oh shit, I wish they had an attorney because now they're in this mess, they're gonna owe $100,000 or craziness like that?
Yeah. So one of my big advice is make sure there is good insurance in place, because what happens, the worst things always happen by lack of communication. When there is an adverse reaction, if someone gets burned, do not, you're going to be working overtime to make sure that that customer is well treated, that you communicate with them, that you do everything within your power to make sure that they get some medical intervention. The worst thing you can do is try to stonewall someone. Always give a refund immediately and as quickly as you can. Honestly, those are the types of things. If a person gets injured in your salon or your spa, that could end your business. So make sure you talk to your lawyer, see what your exposure is, make sure your insurance is all paid up, and be very generous up front, because if it goes to a trial, it's $25,000 in legal fees for you just to go to court. So manage that well from the beginning. Call your lawyer, come up with a strategy on how to minimize any damage in a situation of an adverse reaction or an injury.
Yeah, and I do agree with you 1,000%. I think every business owner, even though your medical director may have malpractice insurance, my medical director has malpractice. I have malpractice too, because it's kind of like double coverage, you know?
Sure. Absolutely. And that's something you never want to cover. You know, people are like, oh my God, I'm afraid to call the doctor because, you know, this little, if there's ever an adverse reaction, even something not serious, you must call the doctor. You must let the doctor know. Realize that doctor is responsible for that person. There's nothing that's going to sour your relationship with your medical director faster is if you're withholding important information on what's going on in the day-to-day life of your business. So make sure you are a good communicator at all times.
So let's say somebody comes to you and you knock out a medical director agreement for them. I guess there's two avenues here. One, there's the common elements of the agreement, what types of things it covers. And then there's the structure between the new business owner, the new nurse or entrepreneur or esthetician or doctor, whoever it is, and with the medical director. I've paid my medical directors a flat fee over the years. And every now and then somebody says, well, gosh, should I give a percentage of the practice? And my gut feeling as a business person is no, work out a flat fee. But what's your opinion?
I think flat fees are great because it's predictable. When you're running a business as a business owner, you like to know what your expenses are. And you also like to be able to tell your doctor, this is what you're going to make by being with me. If you have it a percentage, understand, a lot of business owners are really good at making money while showing losses. So if it's a percentage of the profits and you're not showing a lot of profits because you're, I don't say you're disguising revenue. I always think it's better when you're entering a business relationship. I don't even work on hourly. As a lawyer, I prefer to tell my client, this is how much, if I'm doing a specific project. If it is, you want to do a contract, it's going to be, I'll tell you, this is how much the contract is. I think in a relationship with a doctor, I think it's best for them to know, and that's part of your pitch. You're going to make $1,500, $1,000, whatever it is. That doctor knows what the predictable income stream is and what it's going to be. I think that's the better way to do it.
Yeah, I agree.
I think,
and I've found that states that allow nurse practitioners, let's say the going rate for nationwide is, let's say, $1,000 for a medical director, a doctor, but I've seen a lot of nurse practitioners do it for $600 a month, or naturopaths in Arizona for less. I guess it depends on the type of doctor. I'm not a big believer in getting a fancy plastic surgeon or derm. They want all this crazy money. Not one time in 18 years, Kevin, as a customer, like a Medspa customer getting Botox or laser, said, Louis, before your staff gives me that Botox or laser, can you tell me who your medical director is and what kind of doctor they are? Not one time, Kevin, and a zillion clients.
Right. Absolutely. What can I say? That's been my experience as well.
Yeah. So let's talk about the legalities. When you put together a medical director contract, I know there's a zillion things in there, but what's like the top 5 or 10 things that must be in that contract, you know?
Sure. Well, of course, there's the term. Normally, these agreements are year to year. So that's it. And there's the compensation part. Understand that your agreement with the you are not hiring the doctor. Okay. The doctor is practicing medicine through his or her medical practice corporation. What you are doing is you are actually serving as a manager of the doctor's cosmetic medical business. You're managing the doctor's business. You have formed a company that is essentially a consultant. And your job is you're providing the doctor all of the things the doctor needs to do their cosmetic medical business. So you're providing, and so you want to make sure you're clear in your agreement, what are the things that you are providing? So, in that agreement, you talk about, you're responsible for what things in the business. I'm responsible as the manager because you're managing the cosmetic business. I'm responsible for the rent, the staff. I'm paying the staff. I am responsible for this and my insurance, but make sure that is all laid out very clearly, what it is that you're going to do. And then what is expected from the physician. You can define what the physician is agreeing, or at least how the physician is going to practice medicine with you. And in that, you're going to talk about how often the doctor is going to look at the charts, how often the chart that he or she may come by and do a site visit, and what is the procedure in case of incidents and injuries. All of those should be in the agreement.
So I know for our medical directors over the years, basically I feel like, okay, they're available if there's an adverse reaction on a burn or a lidocaine hive, we contact them. Hey, can you look at this? But what's great with technology, can you look at this via Zoom or text and give me your 2 cents on what we need to do? So they're available for that. And other than that, some states, like I know Texas, like maybe once a month or every 2 months, they'll spot check random files to make sure we're doing things properly and things like that. Is there a legal, is it state by state, or is there a national legal requirement that the medical director has to do certain things?
Right. No, there is no specific. It all reflects on what that medical practice in that particular state requires. For example, different states are doing different things with telemedicine. So there's a question: does the doctor have to be physically present, or can the doctor see them on Zoom? Does the doc or can talk to them on the telephone? So what's required, like in the case of an incident or an injury, or for that matter, giving a prescription? In many of the states where our med spas are, you need a prescription before they can actually get the procedure. So the doctor or the nurse who gives the prescription, the question is, do they have to be present or not? All of those things should be laid out, but these are state by state specific. That's why you should talk to a lawyer to make sure that you are doing things according to the laws of your particular state, because every state is different.
Yeah. Just to give an example. So, Kevin, as you know, I've got a practice in Scottsdale and Dallas, and I'm in Scottsdale. We see a client. We have our medical director delegates permission for my nurses and people to do the procedures, which is part of the medical director agreement you put together. But they have one-time sign-off delegation, and then we just go to town do work. But in Texas, there's new laws that says, okay, a mid-level provider, an NP, a PA, or an MD or DO has to do a screening once a year of the Botox client or the laser client. So, but they delegate permission to a NP. Right. And then we do a telemedicine where NP does a 2-minute phone call, ask them a few questions, then we're legal. So it is a little quirky. Every state's a little different, huh?
Every state is quirky. And to assume that you just know this because you took a class, I think is risky. and here's the other thing, Louis, that I think we all know is the laws are constantly changing. You just asked me to do some work on Ohio. There is new stuff happening in Ohio right now. And it's like, if last year's rules might not be this year's rules. So it's really, really important that you talk to a lawyer, because even people who've been in the business and maybe when they started, these were the rules, and they may be operating under old rules. So it's really, really important that you get a legal checkup before you get into this business and be sure.
Yeah, and I've also found that it seems like every now and then there's different requirements. So maybe it's HIPAA, OSHA, paper requirements. So would you recommend that like once a year they should check with their attorney for an hour or two? Hey, did anything change? Do I need new paperwork? Do I have to do anything different?
Right. So I think it's always a good idea that you have a relationship with an attorney. And I think it's always a good business practice. And I do this with clients all the time, to do a checkup. Do you need to do it every year? I don't know. If you're anal, sure. Maybe every 2 years. But I think it's something you need to do regularly, because it's always fast moving. And particularly in the medical world, it's like the states sort of move in a pack. You know, once one state starts regulating, the other states want to do more and more and more. And they all talk, the legislators all talk to each other. And so we see that if something happens that seemed outlandish and one state does it, then another state, then another state, another state. So it's a very dynamic process. And for whatever reason, you know, a whole lot of rule changes happen in Nevada. You know, it just seems like you just never know where a state is going to get interested in this industry.
When you've seen people set up a shop, they set up a little mini Medspa or practice, they kind of do it themselves, they don't use legal counsel. What kind of mistakes have you seen people make by kind of just moving too quick and not doing the homework, you know?
Well, I mean, I know stories of people who've actually been arrested for not doing their homework. This has happened before, not too often. But the worst thing that can happen is that sometimes if people don't do their homework, and again, the regulatory boards in the states are very protective of cosmetic medicine because it's very profitable. So if a person hasn't set up their shop correctly, I've seen this in a number of states where people have been brought in and accused of practicing medicine without a license, which is a felony in most states. So if you haven't set up your business properly and you're going and you got a machine and somehow maybe you haven't really delegated properly or have the wrong people performing, you can commit a felony. And this happens all the time. And these states, because it is expensive and it is an investment to have these mid-level practitioners involved, if you're trying to get a competitive advantage by getting cheaper personnel and not having the right persons, you could find yourself in jail.
But Kevin, I mean, I am dressed appropriately. I've got my striped shirt on, so maybe it's okay.
Right. All you need is one client. Make a complaint to the medical board in whatever state is and saying, I was burned and I didn't see a physician, and they start investigating and they look into your business and find out, wait a minute, there's no doctor responsible for this patient. You were doing medical procedures without a license. You've committed a felony.
So that's a great point. So when you're setting up a medical director agreement for a client, again, whether it's a doctor, a nurse, an esthetician, a career change entrepreneur, is part of the consult, is part of the agreement, have it showing them what to do in case of an adverse event as far as documentation, things to protect themselves for that?
Yeah, that's really important. And it's also important for you as the business owner to make sure they know you have a doctor and that this doctor isn't just some figurehead, but it is someone who's involved in your business in a significant way. I think it gives a customer, if they know that Dr. Jones is related to your business, and I would make sure they know that. Because you're paying that doctor and that doctor is overseeing what happens in your business, and they should feel a part of it. And the customers should feel that they know that there is a doctor sort of keeping an eye in the background to make sure you're doing everything correctly.
We get asked a lot about paperwork. Oh, can you give me your sample consent forms and disclosure forms, liability? I'm a little nervous about giving that to, even though we know what we're doing, I'm a little nervous because I know that state's law is different in every single state. And I don't want somebody to go take what I'm using and then cookie cutter it, all of a sudden they're getting in trouble because of me. So when you do the medical director agreements, is that part of the process as far as helping them work through the consent forms? That's something else they do on their own? That's
a really good question. So I think you're right, Louis. The forms and the requirements are different state by state by state. And I think so that's something different. I think if you wanted the physician to do the forms, what I would probably do is this. There are a lot of consultants out there that'll help people set up businesses. I think when you spend money to ask lawyers to develop legal forms, I think you're hiring someone above their pay grade.
What about a paralegal? How about a paralegal?
Sure. I mean, maybe a paralegal could do it, or there may be prefab forms in your, there's lots of sources for medical forms. So, what I would do is I would say, here, I found these forms, I saw these sample forms, or someone told me these forms would work, these consent forms, what do you think? So rather than asking your lawyer to draft a consent form, which is probably really expensive, it's much less expensive to say, hey, here are the forms we're going to use in the business. Do you think they pass muster in the state? And I think that's what I would do.
So for example, let's say I provided some of my graduates and clients our forms with a big sample only. They can bring it to you.
Sample only, yes.
Yeah, but they can bring it to you. You can say, okay, that's fine, but we're going to tweak this, this, and this.
Exactly.
Got it.
That is a far more cost efficient, and actually lawyers don't really want to be drafting consent forms anyway, unless they're really desperate for business, or unless they're really a bad lawyer and have nothing else to do. So I think that's something that I would see that as part of the consulting services, but don't have your lawyer draft your document.
Okay. And if somebody comes to you for a consult and wants you to do a medical director agreement for them, what information or questions, what do they need to have ready for the conversation with you, so to make it, efficient?
Sure. So the first thing I would want to know is, first of all, do you have a doctor lined up to be your medical director? Okay. Second of all, do you know the name of the doctor's medical corporation? Because the doctor, that is the corporation that is going to be the owner of the patients. Then another conversation is that you're going to have to be sure your doctor is comfortable with you receiving the funds, or at least getting a sweep of the funds related to the business, because you're managing the business. And there's going to be a financial component as to how you access the funds of the business. And so the question is, are you going to set up a separate bank account strictly under the name? Is the doctor comfortable with you setting up a separate bank account in the name of the doctor's medical business that you are a signatory and you're going to be basically in control of? That's a hard question, and make sure the doctor recognizes the financial setup of the business.
And that's only in certain states, right, Kevin? That's not in all states, right?
Not in every state, but again, yes, where it is that the doctor is where the medical corporation is the owner of the business, the way you do the money is got to be very, very clear. And again, that would be something you may want to talk to your lawyer. I would like to know that before I start drafting documents like a medical director agreement. I think you need to have clear the financial, how the financials are going to work, and that might be a first, part of your first consultation.
I know some states, they call it corporate practice of medicine. I think that's like Texas, California, Illinois, or?
Yes.
And then some states like Arizona is different, right?
Right. So again, corporate practice of medicine is a different concept. The corporate practice of medicine is whether or not a corporation, whether it's permissible in your particular state for a business other than a medical, and actually we're moving pretty far away from that doctrine. I think that corporate practice of medicine is getting less and less popular. I think it's a lot of businesses are doing medical businesses, and the whole idea of corporate practice of medicine is I think a dated form. So you really need to know who needs to own the business in your particular state, and that again is different state by state by state.
So when I kind of listen to this, and I consider myself a fairly sharp guy, and I've been in the business 18 years, I'm thinking to myself, well, if I was listening to this conversation with Louis and Kevin, I'd be like overwhelmed, thinking, oh my gosh, it's too complicated. Maybe I shouldn't even do this and all this legal stuff. And that's why we go to an attorney. We pay them to do it for us, so we don't have to worry about it.
Right. But understand that all of you who are going to be opening these businesses, you're not the first ones to do this. So especially if you have an experienced practitioner involved, you're not the first rodeo. So it's like we all have experience. Lawyers who have done this for other clients know the ins and outs and will be able to give you good advice.
Yeah.
And don't worry, and it's not that difficult. There are so many businesses open. If it were impossible, would there be as many cosmetic medical businesses in the state where you live? Clearly, people know how to do this.
Awesome. And Kevin, if anybody wants a quick 5-10 minute consult, just ask you a few questions to see if you might be a good person to draft the agreement for them and figure out prices, all those things, what's the best way to contact you? And we can put up with the screen afterwards too, but what is that?
Best way is to write me an email. Honestly, I have a very busy practice. I don't answer phone calls from people I don't know. So if you want to talk to me, the best way is to reach me on my email address. Send me an email.
Okay. We'll post that afterwards. So just to summarize, and tell me if I got this right. So somebody's ready to start a business. They set up the LLC or the S Corp number one.
Yes.
Then they think through, okay, who might I know that's a doctor in the state that I could maybe do a barter dealer, pay a good fee for? If I don't know somebody, maybe I contact other med spas or practices that already have medical directors and reach out to them and say, do you want to pick up a second practice versus having to educate a new kid in the block?
Right.
We have to know if there's any regulations in our state where the medical director has to take a couple hours of education.
Yes.
And then once we're there, then we got to get an attorney to put together a quick medical director agreement,
Right.
whatever the going rate is for that. And then there's just a structure we follow. If the doctor has to sign in, check in once a month and ask a few questions or be available for calls or sign a few docs, whatever it is, that's all spelled out by you in this conversation in the consulting agreement, right?
Absolutely. And we'll sign the document. We'll put documents together that are appropriate for the state where you're located and make sure you know everything you need to do to fulfill the legal requirements. It's not that hard.
Yeah, well, I tell you, Kevin, I know you must be doing something right because I've been in business 18 years and the only time I wear stripes is in my office at National Laser.
Yes. Yeah. And you know what? And find a lawyer like me. I'm a lawyer that likes to find ways to get things done, not to find roadblocks to stop you from doing what you want to do. I think that there is always a way, if you are willing to follow the rules and to be a little flexible for you to get your business started. And that's the kind of lawyer you want, a lawyer that's going to help you do what you want to do, not tell you why you can't.
Yeah, and you guys, just as a kind of a heads up, because I obviously want to be cost effective for everybody, there is a couple organizations out there that they do A to Z and they do all the legal stuff. And be careful because those guys charge crazy money. You guys get some marketing play. So if you're going to use an attorney, use an independent attorney, whether it's Kevin or somebody else that's not part of some huge marketing organization that's trying to suck you in this glamour and glitz and charge you 5 times more. I see it all the time.
Exactly. And then try to sell you a whole line of products and all that. No, you don't need to do that. Run your business and find a good counsel who can give you good advice. And a little money spent up front is going to, what do they say? A pound of, what is it? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So
yeah. I think what I always tell people is that oftentimes in the business world, people try to save a penny and it costs them $1.
Exactly. Same deal. All right, Louis, I got to get going. I actually have someone here looking at client.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
This has been awesome. Have a good day, Kevin. Thank you so much.
Have fun. All right. Bye-bye.